that my name is Luis, and your brother and your friend. Let's keep it like that. Thank you very much for this great honor to be part of this sermon series to discuss about how we are going to lift up our voices of justice and love as we collectively vision a different world beyond overdose, mass incarceration, family separation, and the war on my sisters and brothers who use drugs. The topic that I'm going to use in this reflection is our discipleship is to save life. God is in charge of saving souls. We are claiming in this sermon series that we need to mobilize to an activism of moral imagination. For this reason, I am claiming in this reflection that for me, in my pastoral theology, I understand that community of faith must have the constitutional, moral, spiritual, and community responsibility to safeguard life. The matter of saving the soul, that is God's business. So I'm not going to get there. My responsibility as a pastor is to keep people alive. Our challenge and mission is to develop a practical theology, a pastoral theology of saving life. Harm reduction is one of these approaches. I remember June 17, 2020, last month, or this month, people celebrating 50 years since USA President Richard Nixon declared drugs to be public enemy number one. At that moment, as a young person, and I'm still young, I was under the impression that the public enemy number one was capitalism. And in the year 2021, I still believe the same. If you want to find a public enemy number one, in my opinion, is our capitalism system. It is not a secret that the war on drugs is the most successful failure. The war on drugs is one of the most profitable business in the world. So when we say that it's a failure, we have to be very careful that it's not a failure to everybody. There are people making money, profits, by making other people miserable. The criminalization of production, trade, and consumption has not reached the so-called declared goals. That can be enough to say, drop it, let's do something else. But they don't want it. In other words, we are coming with an activism of moral imagination as an alternative to this so-called war on drugs. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 36, we read, when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion of them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Listen to that key word, compassion. 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 I like it in Spanish when I say compasión. In some way, Jesus is teaching us how to look at people. There are some lessons we can learn from this compassion that Jesus gave. First, I believe that compassion is the key concept in all this. If we're going to be successful in a harm reduction, keeping people alive, we need to understand that compassion is the way that we need to live. Compassion literally means to suffer together. I like it. To suffer together. Among emotional researchers, it is defined also as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. In other words, compassion is not an exercise for contemplation. By the contrary, it's a radical action of contemplation and changing whatever is oppressing people. It's like James say in chapter 2 in his epistle. Don't tell me that you have faith. In other words, don't talk to me about God. Show me what you're doing, and I'm going to tell you that you are a person of faith, that you really believe in God. Because my brothers and sisters, all this is about how we're going to live, not a way of thinking. In compassion, there is an unconditional acceptance. Because compassion focuses itself only on the potential of people, ignoring everything else. In compassion, we also find patience. The people for whom you care may refuse to stop suffering. They may rail against you for your effort and treat you even more cruelly than others who do not care about them. Having true compassion for them is refusing to be defeated by such transitional concern. You're not killing my love. You're not killing my compassion. You're not killing my dedication. I'm going to continue moving forward. In compassion, we need courage. The action that arises from courage is always equivalent to action that arises from compassion. So there's some parallels here. We also require courage to survive the criticism that often result when you take compassionate action. You know, Jesus' compassion should move us to compassion for others. Because compassion motivates people to go out of their way to help the physical, mental, or emotional pains of others. In other words, I am my sister and my brother keeper. And sooner or later, I need to respond to God. In other words, my dear sisters and brothers, we need to bring compassion to our drug policies and the policy of drugs that we are running here in the U.S. We need to bring public health compassion that move us into deconstructing the war on drugs, public safety, or national security, because that is not the issue here. We need a human rights compassion that opposes the war on drugs, racism, ethnocentrism, xenophobia, and interventions in bodies. Because it's a reality. Crime is all over the places. Race, gender, social status, yes. But now explain to me How is that we have this overrepresentation by race of blacks and Latinos in the prison system? By class, working class people or poor people. So there are some kind of discrepancies here. As religious leaders, we need a theology of compassion that destroys stigmas and stop the demonization of our sisters and brothers who are substance users. No more discriminatory policies that exclude people who use drugs or have drugs conviction from many of the rights and opportunities available. In other words, we need to bring humanization to those who are also the image of God. One quote that I really enjoy from Saint Romero of America is, the more human we are, the more spiritual. Some people have a funny theology that you need to lose your humanity in order to be spiritual. That's a mistake. The more human you are, the more spiritual. Let me share my stories, or some of my stories that shape my harm reduction theology. My brother Carlos, who in one occasion told me, "Thank you for treating me as a person." He died of AIDS at the age of 30 years old, infected with dirty needles in Puerto Rico. I remember also my brother Adalberto, who in one occasion told me, "For me means a lot that you always care about me." He died of AIDS at the age of 26 years old, infected with dirty needles. And my brother Samuel, who in one occasion told me, "Thank you because you always look for me with respect." He died of AIDS at the age of 21 years old, infected with dirty needles. Every time I share needles with someone who uses drugs, I see Carlos, I see Adalberto, I see Samuel. I'm going to keep them alive with my activism in harm reduction. And then, when in 1990, together with my teammate, Joey Rivera, we decided to start San Antonio Corner harm reduction. At that moment it was illegal. Now it's legal. In the South Bronx, Mott Haven community, the poorest congressional district in the whole U.S. We have countries in Latin America with better statistics than Mott Haven, that is not too far from here, in the South Bronx. Let me conclude this way. As religious leaders, what is the final challenge? Well, we need to learn how to become disciples so we can look like Jesus. Or we can look like Moses, or we can look like Muhammad. But we need to learn from those who came first. Allow me to share the challenge that we use at St. Anne's Corner Harm Reduction. Within homes and among the homeless, more and more people are turning into drugs, including alcohol and other unhealthy behavior to relieve fear and anxiety. Addiction and dangerous lifestyle lead to a vicious circle of personal and social injury. Traditional treatment program view addiction as a disease. They only treat 20%, and the relapse statistic is big. As religious leaders, we need a theology of compassion that destroys stigma and stop the demonization of our sisters and brothers who are substance users. Our discipleship is to save life. Let God save the soul. That is not my responsibility. So I need to do whatever is necessary to keep all my brothers and sisters alive so they can continue facing heaven in earth. In solidarity love, the most important sacrament. Amén. Ashed. Muchas gracias. Thank you.